Don Allen's Magic Ranch was a TV program in Chicago for like 5 or 6 years, and it was a show aimed mostly at children or younger people, and they had participation games and things like that from studio audience members, and you know, if a little 12-year-old kid could be a participant in one of Don Allen's programs, that was a big deal, you know. And he also had magicians. He had every magician in Chicago, sooner or later, appeared on the show. And all the people from New York and LA and other places that came to Chicago to work there, he had them on. And he finally had just about everybody, except one day it occurred to him he had never booked Okito onto his show. So by this time, Okito was, you know, in his 80s, but still able to perform, and they got together, and he decided that Don Allen decided that Okito should perform on his program the production of a huge tub of water. And in order to do this, Okito wore big oriental robes that flowed, you know, down to the ground. And then underneath those, he had a harness on that ended up in a swing kind of load structure between his legs, where they would set this big tub of water. And he would have to walk, you know, with his legs spread a little bit. He'd have to walk to accommodate this tub of water, but when he would walk like 6 feet and stop and make gestures, and they'd throw a cloth down, and the water would, the trapeze thing would swing out, and the water would be under the foulard. So, and it's an amazing trick. In fact, he also did it with live people. He'd produce you know, a Hindu boy or something like that occasionally that way. But so they were going to do that, and Okito, being the age he was, and this being a trick that was something he'd done ever since he'd started 50, 60, 70 years before, you know, they didn't feel they needed to rehearse it. They just blocked the shot, what they call, the cameraman blocked the shot and got everything ready. And on the day of the show, they ran into a problem. And what in those days, the cables that hooked up television sets, and if you walked onto a television stage, you know, where they had like 2 cameras, and they'd have big cables on the floor stretching over to the outlets, and the
big as a hose,
and they were that big around. They were that big in diameter, almost the size of that lens. You remember that, you know. And so Okito was where he was supposed to be, and when Don Allen introduced him, he was going to take his 5 or 6 steps onto the set where he would produce the big tub of water. And so they were ready to go, and Don Allen looked across the room at Okito and realized that Okito was going to have to step over these 6 or 7 cables that were there, and they were so big and so covered such a wide area that he couldn't possibly get across there with 40, 50 pounds of water between his legs, you know. And so he was stuck on the other side, unable, and this is live television. So Don gave a camera signal, got a commercial going real fast, grabbed a couple of guys off the set, ran over and picked Okito up bodily and lifted him across the cables to the other side, and ran back behind his desk and introduced Okito where he produced the water. I should talk about this because in my book there's a drawing of me that's part of a large drawing made by an artist named Sala of all of the members who belonged to the Chicago Magic Roundtable. And so I was a regular member of the round table, and I went almost every day because my office was 2 blocks away, and I had to go somewhere for lunch. So I'd just go down there and have lunch with the magicians and go back to work. So I got to know all the people on the round table, and including Okito. Okito came on Thursdays. Some of the other guys would come Monday through Friday, but Okito came on Thursdays and had a bowl of soup and would sit and talk with everybody for about an hour, and then he'd leave. And when he left one day by accident, he and I left together, and when we got out to in front of the restaurant, he turned south, and so did I. I was heading that way. And we went down to the corner, and then we went across the street and down another corner, and then turned west. And that's where I was going, and we both turned west. And we walked another 2 blocks west, and he stopped, and I went in my building, which was just a few feet further. So I had many opportunities to walk down the street with Okito, and I asked him several questions about the Okito box, and he never really thought of it in the terms that some of the other conjuring kinds of magicians of those days did, like Muhammad Bey put out a 2-set manuscript on the Okito box, and it was far beyond any kind of thinking that Okito had about it. Okito invented it when he went to the doctor's office and got some pills in a pill box, which was a common item in doctor's offices in those days. It was a little flat box about a ½ inch in depth and maybe 2 inches in diameter. And if you put the lid on the box upside down, the ingredients would fall out the bottom. And Okito came back from lunch one day in a visit to the offices of his doctor and made a whole box of pills disappear. And that was the invention of the pill box. And here are pills, loose pills, hard to get your hands on them anyway. And he takes a whole box full of them and makes them disappear. Very interesting.